In today's Gospel, Jesus speaks to his disciples about difficult times and events that might seem terrifying. He speaks of besieged cities, nations in distress, and signs in the sun and the stars. Yet, in the midst of those words that could inspire fear, he utters a radiant phrase that changes everything. When these things begin to happen, stand up and lift your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. It is a profound invitation not to be ruled by fear, but to keep hope alive. Jesus does not announce destruction but transformation. He does not speak of the end as annihilation, but as the birth of something new. The gaze of faith perceives, even in chaos, the signs of a liberation that is already approaching, a renewal emerging in the darkest moments. To lift one's head means not to give up, not to look down, but to trust that the light of God continues to guide the destiny of humankind. From the Christian perspective, this passage is a call to trust amid trials. Jesus knows that suffering and confusion can cloud the heart, but he also knows that faith has the power to see beyond the storm. The believer who lifts their head does not ignore difficulty, but faces it with hope. The liberation Jesus speaks of is not only a future promise but an inner experience that begins now, each time the soul chooses faith over fear. The Christian learns that crises can be places of revelation, where the love of God shines most brightly. To lift one's head is, in essence, to see with the eyes of the heart, to find light within darkness and to discover that the kingdom of God draws near, not as punishment but as the fullness of life. In every age humanity faces its own trials, yet the words of Jesus remain. Heaven and earth will pass away but his love will never pass away. In Islam, this call to maintain hope amid hardship finds its reflection in the concept of sabr, steadfast patience. The Quran teaches, indeed with hardship comes ease. This is not merely a consolation but a deep spiritual truth. Trials are not a sign of Allah's abandonment, but an opportunity for purification and growth. To lift one's head, in the Muslim understanding, is to recognize that every event has a purpose inscribed by divine will. The believer does not despair when the world seems to fall apart, for he knows that God never leaves his servant without guidance. Prayer, trust, and faith in divine decree are the pillars that sustain the heart in times of confusion. In Islamic tradition, every ending heralds a new beginning, and the patient soul finds liberation by surrendering completely to Allah's love and wisdom. Thus, the believer who keeps faith alive becomes a witness to the mercy that renews the entire universe. In Hinduism, the idea of crisis or destruction is not seen as tragedy, but as part of the eternal cycle of the cosmos. In Hindu cosmology, creation, preservation, and dissolution are inseparable aspects of the divine reality, represented by Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Everything that is born must transform to give way to something new. Jesus' message to lift one's head could be understood, in the Hindu view, as an invitation to see in every change an opportunity for spiritual rebirth. When a structure collapses, when life compels us to let go of what we once knew, the soul can awaken to a deeper level of consciousness. In sacred texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches that the wise are not disturbed by change, for they know that the spirit is neither born nor destroyed. Amid pain, the spiritual seeker remembers their true identity, the immortal Atman united with the eternal Brahman. Thus, to lift one's head means to look beyond the fleeting world and recognize that even in loss, the divine remains, guiding everything toward its fulfillment. From the Buddhist vision, the words of Jesus can be read as a metaphor for awakening. When the world seems filled with chaos and suffering, the mind tends to fall into despair. But the Buddha taught that suffering, far from being punishment, is a teacher. Every crisis reveals the impermanence of things and invites us to release our attachments. Through the practice of mindfulness, the disciple learns to observe events without identifying with them, understanding that all is transient. To lift one's head in this sense, is to awaken from the dream of fear. It is to understand that pain is part of the path, but unnecessary suffering arises from resistance. The Buddha said, like a flower blooming among rocks, peace can arise amid suffering. Jesus invites us to the same, to keep our gaze lifted, to remember that even amid chaos there is a promise of liberation. That liberation does not depend on the end of the world, but on inner transformation. When the heart opens to compassion and the mind grows still, the soul experiences the peace that no circumstance can take away. Taoist wisdom too illuminates this passage in a beautiful way. The Tao Te Ching teaches that order arises from disorder, that emptiness precedes fullness, and that true stillness is born from motion. The Taoist sage does not fear change, for he trusts in the natural flow of the Tao. To lift one's head from this perspective means to align with that flow, to let life follow its course without resistance, trusting that even chaos has its place. When the world seems to crumble, the sage observes, breathes, and remains inwardly silent, knowing that the Tao never abandons its creatures. In Confucianism, this attitude becomes a moral responsibility. In times of crisis, the virtuous person maintains integrity, does not lose his humanity, and acts with justice. Though everything around may change, his heart remains steadfast in virtue. Heaven may shake, said Confucius, but the noble person stands firm. That is the Confucian way of lifting one's head, to remain faithful to what is good, even when all else falls apart. When we contemplate these 5 perspectives, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian, we see that they all share an essential message. Hope is not naivete, it is wisdom. It is not about denying pain or escaping reality, but about learning to see beyond it. Jesus says, "Lift up your heads," and that phrase could resonate across all languages and creeds as a universal invitation to awaken. In Christian faith, it is to look toward heaven. In Islam, to trust in divine decree. In Hinduism, to recognize the cycle of rebirth. In Buddhism, to accept impermanence. And in Taoism, to flow with the eternal order of the universe. The liberation of which the gospel speaks is not a distant event but a reality that begins when the soul opens to love and lets go of fear. For when we lift our gaze upward, we discover that the light was never gone. It was always there, waiting to guide us back to peace. To lift one's head is to remember who we are, children of the eternal, seeds of the divine, called to bloom even in the midst of the storm. That is true liberation, the awakening of the heart that chooses to believe, to love, and to trust.